Turn up, Marines, and welcome on board the Endeavour, a Tianjin-class assault ship and the cutting edge of the United America's fleet. I'm Staff Sergeant Higton, and I've been ordered to put you privates through your paces with some intense basic training. In the world of Aliens Fireteam Elite, death comes at you fast, and it's rather furious to boot. So heed my words carefully, and you may just make it through this experience alive. Although there is probably quite a high chance of you coming back with severe evisceration wounds, full body acid burns, and maybe even like a little spiky alien baby in your gut somewhere. But we tend not to talk about that stuff until after it's happened, because otherwise new recruits like yourselves tend to freak out a little bit. Anyway, you heard the man, you know the drill, it's assholes and elbows, people. Let's get on to some basic training. Hoorah!
Eyes up. Bugs now, idea later.
While Aliens Fireteam has quite a deep and, at first glance, rather complex perk and levelling system, try not to worry too much about it all for your first few goes. In fact, don't even think about it at all, because the game doesn't even bother explaining any of it to you at this point. So just go have fun smashing those bugs. You can easily do the first two missions of the first act without buffing your character at all, so just hot drop in and have some fun mashing those morphs. That being said, there are 4 character classes to choose from before you start, and while each has their own special abilities and weapons, the best class for beginners by far is the Demolisher class. The Demolisher is the team's tank class, and they're initially armed with 2 powerful weapons, a classic Aliens pulse rifle and the iconic M56 smart gun. If you're a fan of the movies, you'll immediately know what this gun is and what it's capable of, but if you don't, the best way to describe it would be that it's a minigun with auto-aim. Whip this beast out when a swarm is heading in your direction, and you can just pull the trigger and sit back and let the smart gun do all the work. Not only that, but the Demolisher also comes with a couple of great class-specific perks too, including a shoulder-mounted micro rocket launcher that's perfect for dealing damage to larger Xenos or instantly wiping out small clusters of runners, and they also have a concussive weapon called the Blast Wave, which is great to use when you're surrounded by bugs, as it knocks them all back and either kills them or leaves them stunned for a moment. These 2 perks can be used as many times as you like, but they do have lengthy cooldown periods, so try to only use them when you're confident that you'll maximise their effectiveness. Aliens Fireteam Elite is a squad-based game for up to 3 players, but it can be played solo if your friends have been called downstairs for their din-dins or something. However, while the AI companion bots Alpha and Beta are pretty good shots, their ability to think for themselves is pretty limited, and this can make the final mission in each campaign really aggravating. The first 2 missions of each campaign are pretty straightforward shoot-fests, but the 3rd mission always climaxes in a big, intense, extended firefight, and to be completely honest with you, at this point your bots become liabilities. Once the bigger, badder enemies come out, Alpha and Beta get easily overwhelmed, and they'll often just stand out in the open absorbing damage, meaning that you'll end up having to play medic more than you play the objective. And after pushing through 30 minutes worth of Xenos to get here, having to babysit these moronic Milky Boys is rather aggravating to say the least. So, tips-wise, if you really have to play solo, or want to play solo just to grind for XP and resources, it's best to stick to the first 2 levels of each act and wait for some actual thinking human being companions before you attempt any of the finales.
Assessment successful.
High speed incoming. Get hot.
Using your senses is really important in Fireteam, and by that I mainly mean your senses of sight and sound, because while you will be looking forward at what you're shooting at most of the time, You really need to be aware of your surroundings so that you don't get overrun, and there are plenty of in-game cues here to help you out. Your motion tracker, for instance, is an invaluable tool, and the quicker you get used to checking that out, the better, as you'll be able to call out the positions of approaching enemies to your teammates as they start advancing towards you. An occasional ping noise will remind you to look at the scanner when new threats begin appearing on its screen, but even in the midst of a firefight, it's worth continually checking it out just so you can see whether or not you're being flanked. Remember, this isn't like any other shooter where enemies only run at you from the floor. In Fireteam, aliens will come at you from the ceilings, the walls, and they'll even pop out of vents and ducts behind you, so if you want to avoid being overrun, keep those eyes on a swivel and check your tracker for motion. It's a lot easier and quicker than trying to scan your environment for little signs of movement, and this is especially true when aliens are so good at sneaking up on you from the shadows. There are plenty of other sound cues to listen out for as well, some of which I'll cover later on, but a good one to listen out for is the noise that the game makes when you score a headshot. Nail an alien on its smooth, dong-like cranium, and out of nowhere, an angry orchestra member will have a little toot on the trumpet of terror. This noise plays out for any headshot you hit, no matter what you're aiming at, and not only is it incredibly satisfying to hear, it's also very useful if you're trying to keep track of how many headshots you're hitting for one of the game's tactical opportunities or challenge cards, but again, more on those in a bit. If you've ever played similar squad-based horde games like Left 4 Dead, World War Z, or even Back 4 Blood, you may be aware that friendly fire can be a big hazard to your health. In the chaos of a massive scrum, it's very easy to either hit a friend by accident or to inadvertently wander into their line of fire. But thankfully, if you stick to playing on casual or standard difficulties while you're finding your feet, you won't need to worry about that at all. Friendly fire is only turned on when you start playing on intense difficulty or above, but even then, on intense difficulty, the damage penalties are minimal, with higher difficulties bringing higher damage from your teammates' accidental discharges. Insane difficulty, on the other hand, well, that one involves full weapon damage for friendly fire, so it's probably in your best interests not to play on that mode with me, because, well, my aim, it ain't so good. I've put a lot of hours into games like Left 4 Dead, so it took me a little while to remember that in Fireteam you have a dodge roll button. Anyone who's a Dark Souls veteran will be down with the old dodge roll mechanics, but it's something you don't really get in first-person horde games like Left 4 Dead, so it's easy to forget that you can do it in Fireteam. But honestly, you need to prioritise training yourself to use this skill as much as you can, because it is a lifesaver, especially when you come up against some of the nastier enemies which are able to grab you and pin you down. Imagine being able to leap out of the way of hunters or smokers in Left 4 Dead, rather than just being instantly grabbed and held in place. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Well, in Fireteam, that kind of thing is an actual possibility. Plus, you can just use it to quickly make a space between you and any rapidly approaching enemies. Word of warning though, the amount of rolls you can do in quick succession is governed by a stamina meter, so you won't be able to cartwheel yourself to safety, but you will be able to use it every so often to save yourself from having the skin of your face peeled off by an angry drone like your head was a big meaty blood orange. You'll probably discover early on, what with all the visual cues and all that whenever you stand next to something, you're often able to press a button to enter cover and shoot from there, Gears of War style. While this is definitely a thing, I'm here to tell you that this mechanic is completely pointless in the first campaign. The speed of the Xenos combined with the numbers they attack in makes locking yourself into one position more dangerous than anything else, so when you're starting out and fighting your way through the Katanga orbital refinery, just don't bother yourself with it. Keep on the move and keep on shooting. From the second campaign onwards, however, you're going to need to deal with some new enemy factions, including a whole host of angry synthetics. These pasty pricks act like human soldiers, so instead of charging at you like gigantic ants with anger issues, they'll stick to cover and deploy sentry guns in order to slow down your advance. It's from this point onwards that you'll need to start using the cover mechanics to cover your arse, as sustained pulse rifle fire from multiple synths can do some serious damage to your arse. As the action gets actionier, you'll start running into alternating waves of enemy factions, and sometimes even enemy factions who are fighting one another. So at those points, it's really up to you how to proceed. To cover or not to cover? That is the question. Shooting explosive barrels on a highly pressurized spaceship may sound like a very bad idea, but honestly, rapid decompression followed by a suffocating death in the dark void of space is the least of your worries at this point, so if you do see anything red, give it a shooting. Obviously, timing helps, so wait until you see the blacks of their smooth black fallacy faces or whatever, but if you can hold your nerve and wait for a cluster of morphs to mass near a gas canister before you blow it up, the resulting explosion should wipe out a fair few of them.
Swarm coming in!
As I've mentioned above, there are multiple enemy factions in Fireteam Elite, but as this is a beginner's tips video, the only foe you're really going to need to know about for now are the Xenomorphs. There are around 6 different alien types in the first campaign, and getting a heads up about the ones you'll encounter may just save your life. The most common xenotype are the Runners. These are like the dog aliens from Alien 3, and they'll attack in large numbers at fast speeds. They're really easy to put down with a few good shots, but they can quickly overwhelm you, so do keep your eyes on your scanner. Next up are the Special Xenos, which act just like the Special Zombies do in L4D, B4B, and WWZ. Spitters here often hide behind objects and attack from a distance, hocking big acidic loogies at you. Use a pulse rifle or something with good accuracy to pop these pricks as soon as you see them, but be warned, they do take a lot of damage. These burster aliens are easy to spot because, as you can see, they glow up green. They take more damage to put down than the Runners, but due to their explosive nature, they are the weakest of all the specials. If you see a pack of these running towards you, take them down as quick as you can, or you'll likely get an unwanted acid bath. Next up are the Prowlers. These jump scare bastards hide in the shadows and pounce on unsuspecting players, pinning them to the floor. When pinned, the player will take damage until a teammate rescues them by shooting the Xeno, or until the player successfully performs a quick time event, at which point they'll boot the Prowler in the mush and be able to scrabble away. The Prowlers have a couple of distinct sound cues to listen out for though, which will give you the edge on their surprise attacks. Often one of the player characters will say something like,
"Prowler,"
to let you know one is close, but also you should be able to hear the sibilant hiss of a hidden Prowler if you listen hard enough.
Fuck!
Following on from those are the drones, which are the closest thing in the game to the alien from the original film. These 7-foot-tall beasts will signal their arrival with a blood-curdling scream, and then charge at a member of your team before pinning them to the floor. There's no quick time escape here, you'll need to be rescued by a friend, so if you got, scream for help. The drones take a huge amount of damage and will attempt to flee into a vent before getting killed. But once it's escaped, it'll keep coming back and attacking over and over again until you finally deal the killing blow. Finally, there's the warrior aliens. These absolute nightmares take a huge amount of damage and will attack relentlessly until killed, so it's best to concentrate your fire as a team and finish them off as fast as possible if you don't want to be stabbed through the heart by a 14-foot spike-tipped tail.
depressurization when you're ready.
Each mission has at least 2 battle encounters, places where you have to activate a thing to do a thing in order to reach a thing. The only problem is, a lot of noise is made by all these thingies flying about, and that attracts, you've guessed it, aliens! Thankfully, you're always given a bit of time and some bonus items to help you prepare for these extended attacks, so you'll always know when the metaphorical poop is about to hit the metaphorical fan. These areas will always have ammo caches, those big orange crates, 1 med kit per team member, and at least 1 bonus consumable crate. The ammo crates are a godsend, as you can use them as many times as you like, so a smart demolisher will position themselves close to that, whip out their smart gun, and use any breaks in the action to quickly restock and reload their weapons. Health kits wise, you can only carry 1 at a time, so depending on how much health you have at the start of a big encounter, it might be worth saving that and only healing up afterwards. Then, when you're all safe, you can happily trot off with full health and a new spare medkit in your back pocket. Finally, there's the consumable crates. These can be opened by all team members, so no one will miss out on a treat, and they contain things like mines and sentry guns. There's plenty of quiet time to set these consumables up before you activate the encounter, so don't be shy with the hardware because it might just save your life. It's also worth noting that you can place sentry guns on top of most pieces of scenery, as long as they're not sloped or higher than, say, chest level, but placing them on things like this makes it a little harder for enemies to damage them compared to when they're just plonked on the floor.
Getting there.
It's also worth noting that you can stockpile consumables like turrets and mines even if you fail a mission. So if you have any on your person when the mission ends, they'll be immediately placed in your inventory back at the hangar. Between missions, you can customize your loadout with up to 2 of these stockpiled consumables, which you'll then take with you on the next mission, although you can of course earn and use more consumables across the course of that mission. Consumables are also colour-coded and given rarity values, with those of higher rarities often having elemental effects like electroshock or incendiary rounds. Knowing which enemies are weak to which effects will help you plan loadouts effectively in later campaigns, but in general, Xenos hate fire and synths are weak to electric rounds.
Run the launch sequence by remote.
Every mission in the game has a hidden cache. These bonus boxes hold cosmetic and customization items like weapon sprays, equipment skins, and attachments, so they're worth keeping an eye and an ear out for, because they make a distinct humming noise when they're close by. While the placement of these boxes is randomised each time you start a mission, in my experience there's only a few select locations in each level where they appear, so once you've found them a couple of times, you should know which areas to check when you replay a level.
Hey, if you happen to acquire one of those color-changing cats from LV-895, let me know.
Now that you've played a couple of levels, found some hidden caches and earned some mission completion rewards, it's finally time to visit Staff Sergeant Park's shop in the Armory. Here you can spend your gains and start digging into Fireteam's customization and perk mechanics. Park has 2 stores to choose from, requisition supplies and special stock. The requisition store is where you can buy weapons, attachments, consumables and perks, and to pay for those you'll need requisition credits. A lot of requisition credits, in fact, because things in there are very expensive. As a beginner, I'd say use your cash to concentrate on making sure your base guns have all the best attachments, before you start thinking about buying any new weapons, while perks are something you can leave until a bit later on. More on those later. Park's special stock is where you'll find all the usual cosmetic items like skins, decals and emotes, so if you have enough of the rep script currency, you can really personalise your marine and their loadouts. But it's worth pointing out that here you can also buy challenge cards, which are something else I'll be covering in a later point. Before that though, let's talk about the ways you can earn resources to spend in Park's shop. Aside from successfully completing missions, there are two other ways to earn credits, scrip and cards, the first being tactical opportunities. Just to the bottom left of the mission select screen, you'll see the TAC Ops menu. Click on that and you'll be shown this screen, which holds 3 time-limited missions. 2 of these are refreshed daily and the third one refreshed weekly. You don't need to do anything to activate these TAC Ops, they're always running in the background, but if during the course of a mission you complete any of these objectives, you'll be notified on screen. What's important to remember is that if you do complete one of these TAC Ops, you will need to go back to the TAC Ops menu to claim your rewards before you can spend them. Use them or lose them, Marine!
We made contact with Weyland-Yutani survivors, led by Cynthia Rodriguez.
Next up are the challenge cards. These are mission modifiers that can be selected before you start a mission, and they can do anything from affecting the way your weapons work or giving you a set amount of enemies to kill in a certain way, through to more visual things like bugging out your motion tracker or adding a visual filter to the game. At the start of each mission, players can choose up to 1 challenge card each, but only 1 can be in play per mission. So if multiple players choose a challenge card, only 1 card chosen at random by the game will be used, with the unused ones being returned to the players. These cards also come in different rarities and, depending on the challenges presented, offer different benefits to you as a player. Successfully completing challenge cards awards players with bonus multipliers for things like XP and credits, with better bonuses given for harder challenges, although there are actually some challenge cards that make things easier for players, but those cards come with no bonus multipliers at all. It's also worth knowing that if you fail or quit out of a mission while a challenge card is active, that card will be burnt and you won't be able to use it again. Okay, finally, let's get on to the perks grid, which you'll be able to find and edit in your character's loadout menu. As well as leveling up as a player, you can also level up each individual character class. Each class has its own rank system and its own perks grid, and you'll need to level up each class to rank 7 if you want to be able to access their full perk grid and be able to place core and modifier perks in every slot. This perk grid is a little bit like Resident Evil's inventory system, whereby each perk has a set size and can only be placed in an empty area on that grid that is equal to its size. No perks can overlap, and at first you'll have limited room to play with on the grid. Most of these core perks and modifiers will be locked off for you until you've sunk a fair few hours into the game already, so you won't need to worry about them right at the start. But once one of your classes reaches rank 2, you should unlock a few of them to play with. While the core perks are always class specific, some modifiers can be used by all classes, although there are plenty of class specific modifiers too. It'll be down to you to experiment with which perks work best for you, but one thing that's worth pointing out is that some modifiers directly enhance some of your class's main abilities, and these need to be linked to those abilities in order to get the most out of them. In this example, I've attached the Loud and Clear modifier to my Demolisher's micro rockets in order to increase the damage dealt by them, and then I've also bolted on the Napalm Rockets modifier in order to change my micro rockets into little Bernie missiles of death. Well, it's game over, man! Game over! For your basic training and for this tips video. If you found it useful, do give it a like, subscribe to Eurogamer for daily videos about video games, and maybe even think about joining this channel to receive exclusive members-only perks. Because if you don't, I'll make you and your entire platoon do laps of this entire hangar here until your legs fall off. Hoorah! Right, now I need to go and find a lozenge because doing that voice has made my throat hurt like a bugger. Oh God! Oh, although maybe an alien's laid its eggs down my throat. That won't be the first time, to be honest with you. I'm always putting my face in weird, nasty holes. Oh, 10 hearts.